Today is Friday, July 18th, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. The White House gives an update on President Trump's health after some viral photos. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating. Go ahead and do that right now if you haven't done it already. That'll help us pop up and land in more people's feeds. You can email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. We're getting through all the news of the day each and every weekday bright and early. With me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell, Trayvon Phillips. A lot to get to on the focus story. The mother of one of the Idaho murder victims is forgiving the killer and sharing her journey. Billy, you caught up with her.
Yeah, it's a really crazy story. Her name is Kara Kernodle, and her daughter Zaina was killed during that murder, and really just heartbreaking story, but really powerful faith story as well.
Details on that coming up in just a few minutes. On the main thing, Trey, you caught up with Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, we talked to Kevin Sorbo about all kinds of things, but one of them was actually a really interesting conversation he had in 2018 with Netflix about launching faith-based films there. So interesting details. We'll share some of that.
All right, coming up on the main thing in just a few minutes as well. All right, make sure you're subscribing to all of our CBN News podcasts. We got a lot of them: Newsmakers, Faith and Culture, Navigating Trump 2.0, Heaven Meets Earth. Great podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed and following all of those as well. You can find the links. They're right there in the description of this podcast episode. Okay, we're going to head to the news now in 90 seconds. And photos of Donald Trump at recent events sparked some online speculation about his health, but the White House is pushing back with a full medical update. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said read a memo from Trump's physician yesterday explaining that his swollen legs are due to chronic venous insufficiency, a common condition in people over 70 and not a serious issue. And the bruising on his hands, those were attributed to frequent handshaking and his daily aspirin regimen, both normal and not cause for concern, according to doctors. Trump reportedly underwent vascular ultrasounds, blood work, and an echocardiogram. All results came back normal with no signs of heart issues, clots, or systemic illness. And President Trump hosted this week a faith and business summit calling on the nation to bring religion back and declaring America a nation under God. The Pentagon held a prayer service featuring Edward Graham of Samaritan's Purse, who urged military leaders to make Christ their rock. The Office of Personnel Management issued new guidance ensuring religious accommodations for federal workers, allowing for flexible schedules, telework, and leave for faith-based needs. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And guys, those latest measures are also in addition to the DOJ launching an anti-Christian bias task force to root out discrimination in government agencies like the FBI and IRS, dropping cases against peaceful pro-lifers previously targeted under the Biden-era DOJ. So these are real changes that have happened very quickly under the Trump administration.
Well, and they're common sense changes, right? This idea, it's funny because people will say, a lot of people on the progressive, non-religious side will say, these things aren't happening. There's no examples. It doesn't. And we saw again and again and again examples of the government actually creating regulations and rules, whether it was at a local level or a national, federal level. We saw it from bakers at local levels, at state levels, being punished for not making cakes, all the way down the line. But when it comes to the government, having a litmus test to be able to work in the government, having people mistreat you because of your Christian views, all of this in both the private and public sector has been happening. And I think the fact that they're taking action on it shows that it's been happening and that it needs to be corrected. So these are good moves.
Yeah, and I mean, it's coming at a time when I think we've seen both overt and covert attacks on Christians, right? There have been times when the law has been kind of used to target Christians, and that is more obscure. It's kind of harder to nail down. Like, does everybody know that the government was going after specifically the Christian group? Yes, but is there a way to prove that? Not necessarily, unless you can find a paper trail and things like, FACE Act violations and all these kinds of things. It's obvious that they're hammering harder on the Christian groups, but the law is the law. law, right? So I think it's important when we can to say, look, these things are happening. Like you said, Billy, there are legitimate, obvious, there is a paper trail. It is clear that these things are happening. So, moving in this direction, I think it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll continue to keep an eye on it on cbnnews.com and faithwire.com. All right, Kara Kernodle faced every mother's worst nightmare when her daughter was one of 4 University of Idaho students murdered back in 2022 in a highly publicized case. Now she's speaking out as there has been some recent developments in that case against Bryan Kohberger. So what's the story here?
Yeah, her daughter Zaina was killed. She was one of the 4, as you mentioned. And this is really, it's a heartbreaking story. But the big change, the recent development that you're referencing there, is that Bryan Kohberger, who is a 30-year-old former criminal justice doctoral candidate, he initially maintained that he was innocent in this case. He has since accepted a plea deal admitting guilt to avoid the death penalty. Now, that deal has sparked a variety of reactions from different family members, which is to be expected. Not everybody is in support of the deal. Others are. But we had a chance to speak with Kernodle about her story and her perspective. And she told CBN News that she was initially shocked when she heard about this. She was on a camping trip with her church, and they didn't have cell service. Somebody happened to go down the mountain to where there was service. They saw the news. They came back and told her. And she said, I was just very shocked and confused. She said, because we had this man who was proclaiming his innocence this whole time. And yet there's all these questions, right? They've had so many questions, and now he's clearly not proclaiming his innocence and striking this deal. And it's been difficult because of the unanswered questions. And I think part of this deal is that he's not going to go on trial. He's not going to have to answer any of those questions, right? So if you're wanting to know the why at this point your child was killed, you may never get the answer to that. And so she said that it sparked a lot of confusion for her. And she said she knows that confusion is not of the Lord. And so there's so many just different facets to her story, which we'll talk about in a minute. But to kind of just specifically speak to her reaction, she said she was angry at first because she felt it was too easy for him to just say, oh, I did it, and to sort of not have to go on trial or deal with any of it. But then she said, the Lord is just so good in helping me to understand that it is okay that I don't know everything, and that likely is for my protection. I may never know all the answers that I want. I may never know, and I know now that it's God's protection. And it was interesting because she said, even if I did find out the why, what's it going to change? Is it going to make me feel any better? Is it going to change any of the factors of what happened? She said, there's never going to be a good enough reason for why it happened. So I believe that if we're supposed to know, we will know. So she's just really leaning into the Lord in how she's approaching and dealing with this plea deal.
And Kara has her own journey of finding God. This is kind of crazy amidst all of this, like her own kind of searching and seeking is going on. Tell me about what happened there.
Well, yeah, just to give people a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, we saw some of her comments. Fox News, she had spoken to a local Fox affiliate, and Fox News picked them up, just talking about the plea deal. And she mentioned the Lord. And I thought, well, I want to talk with her. I hadn't seen many interviews with her, so I reached out to her. I had no idea her backstory. This particular mother had been struggling with drugs and substances. She had relapsed just before the murders, right? I mean, I think a week or two before the murders, she had relapsed. And she said she was in a very bad place after Zaina's murder with drugs and alcohol. She said it went from bad to worse. And she said she wished she had had an aha moment, right? Just like after her daughter's death, that would have sparked an aha moment. But instead of running towards Christ, she said she ran towards drugs and alcohol. And she said she got to a place where she knew she was either going to die living the way she was, or that she would need to draw close to Jesus and surrender and change her life. And so she ended up going to jail for 10 months after the murder, right? So here's this mother grieving the worst thing that could ever happen to a parent, her daughter not just dying, but being murdered. It's a national, international news story. And she ends up going to jail and finding Jesus in a jail cell. And she's been sober, for 18 months now, and is clinging to the Lord. And so she has this incredible testimony of finding the Lord in the midst of just such a horrible, horrible situation.
And what does she hope will happen by her kind of doing some of these interviews or speaking out to you and others, which she really hasn't done much, but what is she hoping these interviews that she has done will do?
Yeah, she talked about the fact that she's in a constant battle. She said, I can't say enough how much the Lord has changed my life and how much peace he has given me through all of this. She wants other people to discover the same thing. Keep in mind, she's also forgiven, Koberger in all of this. She said, the Lord asks us to forgive. And, she doesn't want to hold on to bitterness. And so all of these things, she said the bitterness was destroying her. She wants other people to see that you can change, that it was possible. She had a couple of really moving, I mean, the entire interview is moving and you can watch it on our YouTube channel, but she talks about the fact that she would watch other people's lives change before she became a Christian. She would think, that would never happen to me. I could never change like that. And she's like, now it's happened. And she wants to help other people, know that they too can have the same change. She said, people need to know that it is possible with Jesus to overcome addiction in the worst circumstances. And I'm proof of that. If I can help just one person see that, no matter what you're going through, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, the Lord will redeem you. He will break all those strongholds if you allow him to. So she's really just, hoping that this story will inspire other people. And you see how God is working even in the most horrific situation to take her story, her trajectory, and show people that lesson.
It's a powerful testimony. And thankfully, God pulled her out of her own kind of chaos there that she was going through just before and then after the death of her daughter, which was just a horrible thing to have for anyone to have to deal with. And in the midst of that, it's just, man, what a wake up call to be in prison and then have to go to jail and sit behind bars and contemplate all of this. But then God moves in a mighty way. And now she's got an incredible testimony to tell. And again, not that you have to go to the lowest of lows to have a great testimony. I mean, even people who've grown up in church and haven't gone through all of the chaos, that's a great testimony in and of itself as well. But God moves in unlikely, sometimes unexpected ways. And this is definitely one of those.
When I was first reading through this story, Billy, I couldn't help but think about Genesis 50:20 that says, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. And I just have thought, wow, God will use absolutely anything to bring us to himself and to bring himself glory. And it's horrific, this entire story. There's absolutely nothing good about what has happened, like in the flesh and blood, like a world that we live in. But what an incredible thing the Lord has done through such just horrific and disgusting tragedy to bring her to Jesus. And I think that is just a beautiful miracle of God's faithfulness in the midst of such despair.
Billy, final thoughts on this one?
I think it's an example of really what God can do. And I don't want to be repetitive. It's just so important in the midst of horrific things. When we're experiencing pain and suffering and we can't see a way through it, you look at this story and you see this woman who found a way not only through that horror with her daughter, but through her own pain in her life. And so we just have to lean in as hard as it is. And I've been there where I haven't wanted to lean in, but seeing somebody like that, if she can go from where she was to where she is now, it is possible for anybody to change.
Appreciate you doing that interview and then breaking it down here for us on the podcast today. If you want to check out that interview, it is on the CBN News YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. It's powerful stuff. All right. We are going to head to the main thing now, and Trey caught up with Kevin Sorbo and talked about a whole bunch of things, including the entertainment industry's seemingly constant attack on the nuclear family and an eye-opening conversation he had with Netflix years ago, as well as his movie with Dallas Jenkins, What If? That conversation is today's main thing.
You're here promoting the re-release of What If, a movie that you made about 15 years ago now. So
you were in grade school, I think.
Right. Give me a quick rundown for people who might not have seen it when it originally came out. Tell us a little bit about what the movie's about.
Well, a lot of people didn't see it originally came out because that's the trouble with independent movies. You shoot these lower budget movies. And I say lower budget doesn't mean lower value. I mean, it's a wonderful movie. But God's Not Dead is the same guys who wrote that one, wrote What If, and God's Not Dead was huge because of word of mouth. Well, we need word of mouth in this movie as well, but it's a wonderful movie it's a supernatural faith movie where my character gets a chance to find out what his life should have been according to God. And I do tell people it's a reverse Wonderful Life, but it's not like It's a Wonderful Life, because in that movie, Jimmy Stewart's character is at the bottom of his world. He's ready to commit suicide, and an angel comes in to intervene to say, look at how bad things would have been in this little town if you weren't here. How important your life is to all these people here. In my world, I get shown the world, but I like the road I'm on. I don't want to see that road that God has intended me to be on. So I go kicking and screaming. From John Ratzenberger shows up as the angel that's there to show me what I should have been doing. But it's a wonderful, funny. It's faith-based. It's love. It's laughter. It's redemption. And I've done over 90 movies. It's in my top 3. Trust me. I've always said this. I've been talking about that movie since 2010 when it came out.
Well, tell us why these kinds of movies resonate with people, because if you hear Hollywood day in and day out, they don't think these kinds of movies resonate with people, but the box office tells a different story, obviously.
Yeah, well, they're starting to wake up a little bit because now I'm getting some interesting connections with more Hollywood people, and I was saying, could you send us some of your faith-based scripts? They're
Hmm,
waking up. I mean, how many more Disney movies do they have to keep making that loses $300 million like their last one with Snow White? I mean, honest to God, if I'm a stockholder in that company, I'm going after 5 years of what they've been doing. You're going, why are you doing this?
right,
People don't want to see this kind of stuff anymore. So they're it's it took them so long to wake up because it's got God in it, right? They're Christian movies. They think they associate every Christian author with a conservative, Republican as well. And it's just that's kryptonite to them for whatever reason. It's amazing. When I did a movie called Let There Be Light that my wife wrote, Sean Hannity funded it. I directed it, starred in it. It opened number 2 per screen average against Thor Ragnarok. Here's a $3 million movie up against a 300. I
hmm,
got a call Monday from Netflix, this in 2018, and said, we want to open an inspirational division with you. I went, hallelujah, this is awesome. I have 4 meetings with them over 4 months. In each meeting, I could tell less and less and less. This was all just lip service. It was weird. And I told them in the last meeting, I said, you guys with your ideology and hatred towards the Christian community, towards the conservative community, to 80 million homes out there that want these kind of movies that I do and what the Irwin brothers do. I said, you support them.
right.
What is wrong with you guys? And they ran away because it's got God in it, right? Well, look, I did a movie called Soul Surfer. And here's this little 13-year-old Bethany Hamilton on being interviewed on Good Morning America, and she brings up that this God wanted her to lose her arm so she could talk about him. They don't know how to react to that. They're freaking out. But it's like, wow, they're starting to wake up now, trust me. And I think What If is a great place to start with. For me, that was the road. That was my what if. That was the road that I was intended to be on. And that movie showed me that this is the movies God's want me to do.
Well, the crux of the movie is something that's so critical to society, yet is so often under attack, and that's the family. I think, we're living in
I
a
know.
world today, even, Kevin, within the last week, right?
Yeah.
That I think the entertainment world is doing everything they can to belittle a biblical nuclear family. So, what do you make of that and this movie coming out in this
Well,
time?
I just call that more mental illness. I mean, it's insane to me the attack that having a marriage, having a family, having children is old fat. Look, we're on slow suicide with what populate this country. Um, you look at the Muslims don't feel that way, right? They have 5 wives and have 6 kids with each one, so they certainly don't feel that way. But it's a weird thing that what we're doing through the media. I think that this is a perfect example of showing Satan working. I mean, seriously, it is. It's a very evil society we live in. This medium right now, you and I be able to do this. This technology is great, but still, the internet is the Wild West. It's used so much for hate and so much anger and so much attack. You and I need to pray for people like that because what a horrible way to live your life every single day, to wake up and go, what can I be angry about today? I mean, every day. I mean, the things that must physically do to them, psychologically, must do to these people, and it just gets worse and worse. But like I said, this is a good tipping point, and some people, I think a lot of people are starting to wake up.
All right, Trey, appreciate that conversation there. And that's going to leave us with time today for one last thing.
We've got Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. We've got to lean in and we've got to trust.
Faith is a spiritual practice, but it's also an intellectual practice, right? We need to dive into God's word, study it, know it, so that we can live it out effectively.
Yeah, and that's amazing. That's how do you know God's will? Test and approve, do it through the word of God. And then you'll know, not conforming to all the things that we see around us, the temptations of the world that the secular world brings in front of us all the time. All right, good spot to leave it. For this week's Quick Start podcast, as always, make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com. And now we've got our all new Faithwire Substack. Make sure you're checking that out as well. We are going to be posting there, praying there, most importantly. So find the link in the description of this episode. God bless. See you back here Monday.